Okay, today we're going to examine this 1229, this model 1229 Pfaff. This was brought to us by a customer in New Jersey, and their complaint was that the master dial is very hard to turn, and they had some other issues. First, we're going to check the serial number. The serial number on this machine is 317-11144. We're going to start by taking the covers off. Now, these machines were produced from roughly 1982 through 1987. It was, although it was a relatively long production run in terms of the number of years that it was produced, there weren't a lot of these made because in 1983 Pfaff introduced the first user programmable computerized machine, model 1469. So that became quite popular and pushed this machine's popularity aside. However, the model 1469, when it was introduced, did not have what's now known as the IDT, which stands for Integrated Dual Transport. This feature, which is on this machine, is located here, this red. That's now called the IDT system. Formerly it was called dual feed, and this is the feature that most Pfaff customers were seeking. That feature at the time was a Pfaff exclusive, so that made the brand quite popular. I'm just going to check. This model was produced in 1981, actually toward the end of 81. So it was probably sold as a 1982 model. It's the first run, and the way I can tell that is this stitch chart is colored. They only did that for, I believe, 1 year, and then they went to no colors. This is considered the most complicated of the 1200 series. This machine has its own casting, meaning it's not shared with any other model. This is the only machine that used this casting. I believe, personally, after working on Pfaffs for all kinds of models for several years, that this machine was a test bed for the electronics. Some of the sensors and things that would come in the later years. One of the things that we see nowadays is that there aren't too many people left that remember these machines or worked on them when they were new. So there's not a lot of experienced technicians are out there for German Pfaffs, and they're getting fewer by the day. The other issue, frankly, is there's no availability of new parts. At least you cannot buy new parts from Pfaff today. At least 90% of the parts for this machine are no longer available. Now, we have a fairly good supply of parts because we've been a dealer since 1952. In 1995, we realized the company was probably in trouble, and we started buying parts, genuine parts, because we knew at some point if the company doesn't produce parts anymore that these would be rather valuable. Because frankly, the machines will go and go as long as you have parts. And although most of the parts in these machines are never going to fail, there are always going to be what's considered high mortality rate parts. And these are parts that either break or fail from wear. For example, the motor belt. This is the original motor belt on this machine. This should be replaced. This is another item. This breaks. It's a plastic screw that holds the handwheel cover on. This often breaks. So we're going to have to remove all of the automatic unit. Most of the clutch mechanism. We need to get at this component. This is a common ailment for these machines, and later in the video we'll see why. The purpose of this video is not to teach people how to repair the machines, but is designed to show what is involved in doing a machine properly, and also to show that we have the ability and the equipment and parts and skill set to do them. We're going to begin to see some evidence as to why this stitch length control is stuck. One of the things you notice on any 1200 series machines, there's on your master dial there's an index marker. On this machine it's this red square. On many 1200s it'll be white, but it's either white or red. This index marker should always be at the 12 o'clock position. It should never be anywhere else. Once this index marker is moved, left or right, then the dial itself and the cam is out of phase. So that means you won't know where the stitch length is or the width or anything. You'll just be lost. So that's why it's necessary to fix it. Start to see evidence of the lubricant, which was at one point a grease, has now turned into more of a wax consistency. Okay, now we have the dial removed. The next trick is to get the zigzag cam out. Okay. Now we see more of the grease that's turned to almost a solid, almost a wax. When that happens, this used to be grease, and it's almost a solid now. The problem is in this bushing. Now what we're going to need to do to properly repair this machine, we have to remove this bushing, and the machine will have to be drilled and a pin put in it to keep it from rotating again. Now this is going to be a permanent fix for this machine, but it's not easy and it's not cheap. The reason people are interested in having this job done is the machine is so reliable, so nice to use, that the money spent is seen as a bargain. Especially compared to today's machines, which are basically plastic. This was as close to an industrial machine as you could get and still be in a domestic machine or a household machine. Okay, got it loosened up. I'm going to put some solvent on it and let it sit for a while. And then I'm going to remove that bushing. I'm going to clean the bushing in a solvent and prepare the parts for machining. Now in this machine here, the customer also indicated there was a problem in the bottom of the machine, in the hook area or bobbin case. So I'm going to go ahead and take the base off and take the machine apart enough to see what's happening. This is the hook area. I don't really see a problem here, but these machines are also known for having a bearing issue. And in this case, it looks loose. This shouldn't be moving at all. So I'm going to go ahead and continue to take the machine apart until I am satisfied that there isn't any real issues and that it's merely adjustments. In this case, it may be that someone else has worked on the machine and haven't gotten everything back together quite properly. That happens very often. People will bring their machine to a sewing machine repair place that repairs Singers or some of the Kenmores or some other brands. And the problem is that this machine is nothing like any other machine. Pfaffs are very precise, very well assembled. The tolerances on these machines are very close, unlike other sewing machines. Some of the older machines that were called oscillators were so loose that they would never seize up. And that's why Pfaffs sometimes can act up like that, because if you don't use them for long periods of time, the lubricant dries up and becomes like a varnish instead of an oil. And then the parts just stick. And that's often the case with Pfaffs. Okay, this one has what appears to be a seized up bearing, so we're going to have a look at that. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and take this shaft out, because I think at this point I may rebuild this bottom shaft just so we don't have any issues. Can be very time consuming to do these jobs, hence the cost. My guess is, at this point, looking at this, what we have here, I would say this is going to run about 5 hours in total. Now luckily for you, the video will end up being just a few minutes. So you don't have to sit through hours and hours of this tedious, boring stuff.